Today, we're going to be comparing the iPhone 16 versus the iPhone 15 Pro. The question is, should you go for last year's flagship, which is now available at a lower price, or should you get the latest and greatest base model iPhone? I made a similar video last year comparing the 15 to the 14 Pro, and let's just say this year things are very different. To start, price puts everything into perspective, so let's start there. The iPhone 16 from Apple with 128GB comes in at $799. On the other hand, the iPhone 15 Pro, while no longer available from Apple directly, can be found new on many third-party sites and retailers, also with 128GB for around $850. And I've even seen it refurbished for $650 on Amazon. Now, what this means is that these two phones are quite similarly priced, making this comparison all the more interesting. Right, so let's talk about the design. Now, the design of these two phones is actually more different than you might think. The iPhone 16 uses an aluminum and glass design compared to the more premium Grade 5 titanium and glass build of the 15 Pro. Now, to me, from a looks perspective, the iPhone 15 Pro is going to be the slightly better looking phone for its use of the titanium design, as well as the thinner bezels going around the display, though I will say I do like the smaller camera module that you'll find on the iPhone 16. It's also important to note that the titanium build on the 15 Pro is going to be significantly more durable than the aluminum used on the iPhone 16. In the hand, I would say both phones feel very comfortable and nice to hold, and this is thanks to the fact that they both have slightly rounded edges going along the frame, unlike older iPhone models. However, there is a pretty substantial difference in weight. So the 15 Pro is 17 grams heavier at 187 grams compared to the 16's 170 grams. Now, do you feel this difference in the hand? Well, actually, yes, you kind of do, and this does make the iPhone 16 slightly more comfortable to hold and use, especially for extended periods of time. Both phones also use USB-C and have the handy action button. So which design is best? Well, I would say that the iPhone 15 Pro takes this category for its more durable build and even better looking design overall. But let me know in the comments, which design do you prefer, the 15 Pro or the 16? And if you are enjoying this video so far, a sub to the channel would be amazing. But what about the displays? Well, both phones have a 6.1-inch display, which is the perfect size for many. Both are also OLED displays, so colors really pop, and each also gets up to 2000 nits of brightness, meaning that even on a bright sunny day, both displays are easy to see. Each phone also has the useful dynamic island and reliable Face ID to unlock. But there is one crucial difference with these displays, and that has to do with the refresh rate. The iPhone 16 still uses a 60Hz refresh rate, where the 15 Pro has the much faster 120Hz variable refresh rate. But what does this mean? Well, this means that any animations on screen, whether you're swiping or moving between apps, scrolling between text, all is going to be much smoother on the iPhone 15 Pro and feel more fluid. Side by side, this difference really is clear, and by comparison, makes the 16 actually feel a bit choppy. Now, don't get me wrong, if you are used to 60Hz, then the 60Hz on the iPhone 16 will be just fine. However, once you do get used to that buttery smooth 120Hz refresh rate on the 15 Pro, it's gonna be hard to go back. Another feature you will only find on the 15 Pro is the always-on display, which is nice to have, but something I personally actually turn off due to battery concerns. But we'll talk more about battery in a sec. Okay, so it is clear that both the 16 and the 15 have really great displays, but the 120Hz refresh rate of the 15 Pro does give it a big advantage, making the phone feel even faster to use compared to the iPhone 16. Therefore, this round 2 goes to the 15 Pro. Now, let's talk about cameras. The iPhone 16 features a dual lens camera setup, a 48 megapixel main lens and a 12 megapixel ultra wide lens. On the other hand, the 15 Pro has a triple lens camera setup, adding a 3x telephoto lens to the wide and ultra wide lenses. But does this mean the 15 Pro is better? Well, in photos, I was honestly surprised by how similar the results from these cameras are. That said, there are some fine differences if we take a closer look. For example, the 16's colors are a little bit more true to life compared to the slightly more vibrant image of the 15 Pro. Now, which is going to be better? This depends on your preference. Personally, I prefer a more accurate look that I can then make more vibrant if I choose. Interestingly, the 15 Pro does have a bit more contrast, pulling in more details from darker parts of the photo. Sharpness, I would say, is very similar on both, each retaining high detail even when zoomed in. The ultra-wide lenses are pretty much identical, aside from the differences in color that we also see on the main wide lenses. Both ultra-wide lenses are sharp with minimal distortion and keep a consistent look to their main wide lenses. Of course, where the 15 Pro shines is in having that extra 3x telephoto lens. While yes, the 16 does have a 2x mode, which uses the main lens for a crop, it is simply not the same as having that dedicated 3x lens. For portraits especially, the 3x lens is great, bringing better sharpness and a nice shallow depth of field. The advantage of the 3x lens is also clear when zooming beyond 3x, where the 15 Pro vastly outperforms the 16 in detail retention, also letting you zoom in at up to 15x versus 10x on the 16. Video, I would say, is equally strong, delivering best-in-class iPhone quality video at 4K at up to 60 FPS. We do see the same slight differences in color carry over from photo mode. Ooh, there's one thing I almost forgot to mention, and that is a camera feature that is unique to the iPhone 16, and that is the camera control. This is a unique touch-sensitive button that lets you capture photos and also switch camera settings on the fly. Now, this sounds cool in theory, but in practice, not so much. Personally, I don't use it. In fact, I've actually disabled it on my phone because I found it unintentionally activating. Plus, due to where the camera control is positioned, I found it to be uncomfortable to reach or to use, as opposed to just using the touchscreen to capture the photo that way. Some may see this differently, but in my eyes, you're not missing out by not having the camera control on the iPhone 15 Pro. Now, back to the camera performance, the two phones are very similar. Both truly are excellent, especially for their relative prices. However, the 15 Pro does outperform thanks to having that dedicated 3x telephoto lens for better quality portraits and zoom, and therefore this phone takes this category. But what about performance? Now, the iPhone 16 uses Apple's A18 chip and the iPhone 15 Pro uses the A17 Pro chip. Both phones have 8 GB of RAM. And well, as I'd expect, both phones each deliver true flagship performance. Whether you're launching apps, switching between apps, gaming, editing photos, all are equally snappy and fast. Both also support ray tracing in gaming, which looks great. It is also worth noting that the iPhone 15 Pro, since it has the Pro version of the A18 chip, does get Apple Intelligence, unlike the regular iPhone 15, which does not. So there's no compromise here. Now, while today Apple Intelligence still has a long way to go, it is good to know that both phones do support this in the future, as Apple Intelligence will hopefully improve. Speaking of the future, I would expect both phones to get around 5 more years of software support and updates, meaning these phones will last. Therefore, this category is a tie. But what about battery life? Well, the iPhone 16 lasts me all day with around 30% remaining at the end of the day. By comparison, the 15 Pro typically end with around 15% remaining, so the battery life is not the same. Both phones do have MagSafe to conveniently charge or add accessories, and both also charge at an acceptable 27 watts wired. All in all, the battery life on the iPhone 16 has been a bit better, likely thanks to it having the more efficient A18 chip, and therefore the iPhone 16 takes this category. So which phone should you buy? Well, let's add up the scores. Design goes to the 15 Pro for its better looking and more durable design. Display too goes to the 15 Pro for its higher refresh rate. Camera is a close one, with both performing very well, but the 15 Pro does even better thanks to the extra functionality brought by the additional 3x telephoto lens. Performance is a tie, both run very well and will do so for years to come, but in battery life, the 16 outperforms the 15 Pro with longer battery life. Adding all of this up paints a pretty clear picture. Both are great phones, but ultimately I would choose the iPhone 15 Pro. And this is interesting because this outcome is actually opposite to when I did this video last year, where at the time the new 15 won over the 14 Pro, while this year it is last year's flagship, the iPhone 15 Pro, that wins. Let me know if you have any questions at all. As always, I will leave the purchase links to both phones down in the description, and if you have just bought your new iPhone, then be sure to check out my 25+ tips and tricks video to help you get the most out of these powerful devices. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.